In this debate, we've had many views expressed, and something that really surprised me was the former Prime Minister Ranil Wickramaratne putting up his hand and saying that he was also responsible for bringing the PTA under urgent conditions in 1979. I had no issue with that. He was a young politician and that he participated in that process. But what surprised me was that he concluded that with the PTA that it was possible to actually reduce terrorism. 1979, 1983, 1990s, I mean, what are we talking about? Terrorism doesn't basically go away with just formulating laws. Laws are part of a system, and terrorism doesn't go away in that particular way. The problem we have with the present PTA, if I would sort of summarize it, is that the term that somebody could be held is extraordinarily long, and the amendments suggest that it will be brought down. The next problem that we have with it is that the person is not produced before a magistrate like under a normal law, and it's by executive order, the detention order. It's by the executive. The third issue we have is that it denies bail to the accused if an indictment has already been there in the High Court. And fourthly, it makes confessions to police officers admissible, and thereby incentivizing the abuse of those in custody. Now, it is very clear that this has been abused in a big way. Just to give you an idea, according to the data of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, 212 people were arrested under the PTA in 2020, 109 in 2021. This is what actually the data shows, and I won't go into all the data. I think the well-known cases of how this has been abused was the case of Rishad Baduddin, arrest of Asad Salih, Hejaz Hizbullah, and then Anas Jasim. And with the Hejaz Hizbullah case, 5 others have also been held under the PTA. But there are some names which we have talked less about. Among them is the high-profile case of Murugapille Kokulathasan, a freelance Tamil journalist who was arrested in Batticaloa in November 28, 2020 because of a social media post commemorating Civil War-related incidents. He remains in custody. Kirti Ratnayaka, a freelance journalist, was summoned to a police station, arrested on August 14, 2021. He remains in custody. 10 Tamil-speaking people were arrested from memorialization events in Batticaloa on 18th of May 2021 and held under the PTA. In Batticaloa again, the police detained 19 people in November 2020 for allegedly posting online birthday wishes for the late LTT leader, and they were arrested. Well, if these are offenses, let's take them under the normal law of the country. I don't think we should be using a draconian law like the PTA to harass people like this. And I think we should look at it as the normal law of the country. The view of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, I'm quoting from the 15th of February 2022, with the chairperson, Justice Rohini Marasinghe. This document has been released. And in it says, notwithstanding the amendments already suggested by the government, the Human Rights Commission advocates the complete abolition of the PTA. The Commission believes that the offense of terrorism should be included in the penal code with a new definition for terrorism. It is explicit for those who threaten or use violence unlawfully to target the civilian population by spreading fear and thereof to further a political, ideological, or religious cause. The Commission advocates that terrorism should be investigated under the general law of the country with necessary amendments. The Commission also supports that it is not required to exclude the application of evidence ordinance for the offense of terrorism. The indefinite period of detention violates the Constitution and quotes, deprivation of liberty of a person pending investigation or trial shall not constitute punishment according to Article 13, Section 4. So this is the view of the Human Rights Commission. Now really we need to address this issue. The Samagi Jana Bala Vegaya, we are conscious of the fact of the importance of national security. The question really that lies before this House is, How do we balance the importance of national security with the prevention of terrorism? How do we balance it? How do we protect the human rights of people while being conscious of the issues of national security? What happened when this law was brought in 1979 under emergency? It was brought and it was passed. Basically, there was no reference.
Honourable Minister, Honourable Member, you have 2 more minutes.
No reference to the Supreme Court of the country. That's how it was actually passed. And it was remained in the books for so long without actually being corrected. One fundamental problem with this is the provisions reflect an undue and totally unconstitutional lack of trust in the competence of the judicial officers in the country. I think we need to rebalance this by bringing to focus the importance of the judiciary and the judiciary making the decision whether somebody should be held or whether that person should be actually released. The Samagi Jana Balawegya is proposing that we take the Law Commission draft that was prepared in 2016 with the chairmanship of President's Counsel Romesh De Silva, who is presently the chairman of the present government's Constitutional Process Committee, and adopt that as actually the alternative to the existing PTA. So we are for repealing the existing PTA and then replacing it with that draft of the Constitutional Council. I might say in closing, I listened carefully to the Honourable Minister and I couldn't agree with everything he said. He said, for example, there are going to be daily trials. The issue is, before you get to the trials, people are unfairly held for such long periods before we get to the trial. I have a long list of them. I can't read them because of the lack of time. The magistrate going and visiting detention centers is not practical. I'm not sure if the minister has visited a prison cell. I have visited prisoners in prison cells. I have been to detention centers. It's not practical for a magistrate with his load of work to do so.
Thank you. Your time is over.
I will conclude with this. I will conclude with what the Financial Times on the 7th of March said this. It's, and I quote, "What is needed is a genuine effort in Sri Lanka to address its numerous outstanding human rights issues. In this regard, it is time for an emeritus professor of law to learn a few things from a dead fashion designer on how to be a positive instrument of change to advance the human rights in Sri Lanka." Thank you for the time provided.
Thank you.